Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Chatting With. And today I'm chatting with Pro Wrestling Zone's Rick Del Santo.
What's happening, everybody?
So, Rick, I'm not sure if you seen it or not, but there's a Facebook page on, of course, Facebook, but it's called WWF Old School, and they asked,
Yes. Yep.
people's opinion of what people call it the team of the Macho Man Randy Savage and Stone Cold Steve Austin.
What do they call the team? You said?
What the fans would call the team of Randy Macho Man Savage and Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Stone Cold Madness? No?
Well,
is that an option?
It can be anything.
Yeah. Stone Cold Madness. That's what I'd go with, I guess. I just came off with that off the top of my head. Yeah.
Well, when I first seen it, I came off with the top of my head of combining a nickname or each of their nickname, which I came up with the Macho Rattlesnakes.
Okay. That's not that bad. I'm trying to think if I can come up with any. It's got to be Steve Austin, like the Stone Cold era. Or
that's what it. Say I'll.
Not the Stunning Madness or nothing like that.
That's what it is.
Yeah. Okay. That's the Stunning or the Stone Cold era. Okay. So what else you got, Donnie?
So, quite honestly, I got the DVD Freak's opinion, or a little bit of the DVD Freak's opinion, a week from this past Tuesday on this topic. But what's your thoughts on the Zelina Vega release, Rick?
I think it's completely 100% ridiculous. WWE claims that it's unrelated. I don't believe that one bit. I think she's going to end up in AEW. A lot of people are thinking that she's going to go back to Impact. What was her name in Impact? Do you remember? It was like Rosita or something like that?
Yeah, Rosita.
Yeah, a lot of people are thinking that she's going to go back there. But for some reason, I think that AEW is going to snag her up because I think that she's quite a good character. And I think that she'd benefit very well in AEW. Impact, I've always considered Impact, I guess, hear me say this several times, as much as I like Impact, and I think that there's periods of time they're very good, and then there's periods of time I just can't watch it, and they're just doing ridiculous stuff, and they're just relying on ex-WWE talent 98% of the time during certain periods. Excuse me, my face is itchy. I just think that it's like Impact is like wrestling purgatory. It's like you go there before you figure out where you're going to go, where else you're going to go, whether you're going to go up, which is WWE, or you're going to go down, you know what I mean, back to the indies.
I think the right term, what you're more or less describing, is like the developmental territory for WWE.
Yeah, it's like purgatory. Yeah, it's kind of, I always consider it like purgatory. Yeah, I mean, I know it's a lack of a, like you said, developmental, sure.
Quite honestly, I don't see her husband, Aleister Black, staying much longer after her release.
From what I heard, he asked to go back to NXT, and they're denying that request. So we'll have to see if anything comes of that. I think that he'd benefit better going back to NXT, but like you said, I'm not sure he's really going to stay there much longer.
I can see
other than that,
I can see him kind of following Zelina Vega to wherever she goes.
It's very possible. But at the same time, you got to think, are they married or are they in a relationship?
They're married.
They're married, so I mean, someone's going to keep the income coming into the household, really. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
It wouldn't be quite smart, considering she just lost her job, for him to just all of a sudden just say leave. Even though he could go anywhere. I think that he would benefit from going to AEW. I think that AEW would benefit from bringing him in because, like I said, he doesn't really he doesn't have the WWE mold, I guess. He doesn't fit in with the WWE. I think he's too good. Not that WWE's terrible. It's just they just don't know how to book someone of that nature, of his caliber. I think he's above and beyond the booking that they come up with for him.
I like describing WWE, the modern WWE, as a modern WCW.
I understand. You're pretty much correct on that.
Because
it's why a lot of people. It's like why a lot of people turned away from WCW in the last 2 years. 2000, 2001.
Because what I mean for all the viewers anyway, what I mean is that they have all this pure talent.
Mm-hmm.
That's so great, but they don't know how to use them.
They have an amazing roster. I mean,
yeah.
And I'm not, when I say that, I'm not necessarily a fan of guys like Braun Strowman or, but he's useful in certain storylines. He'd be like a great attraction, like an Andre or something like that. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But like you said, they just don't know how to use the guys that they have. It definitely is it's definitely a booking thing. They've had a very profitable year, though they're losing ratings over and over. But the booking is just horrendous. They have television writers. They got too many television writers trying to do the job rather than actually people that are involved in the professional wrestling business and people that know how to book.
I have to agree with that statement. They should get rid of all the writers and get people that actually knows how to write. Knows how to write for the wrestling business.
Let me ask you a question. Now, this is something I just finished up an episode with Dan for the PWZ. And you could check that out on Spotify, iTunes, iHeartRadio, and YouTube, of course. Shout out to myself. Sorry. But anyways, what do you think about them? They just wiped out their whole house show department, the whole live events department, excuse me. They cleaned out the section. They're not going to be running house shows ever again, it seems like. They basically said that it admitted to being only a television company at this point. What do you think of that? It's so now they have to focus more on trying to get that television product better, or maybe that's just what they're happy with. I don't know. What's your opinion on that?
Well, really, it can accomplish really kind of two things here. One is, like you said, is they can put more focus on getting the product better.
Right.
And two, I don't really see what's the point in having a live event department at this point the way the world is.
Well, you're right at that point, but it seems like they're pretty much even when this pandemic is done and over with, or when it's more under control, that they're not looking to get back into doing live events or house shows. They'll probably host regular events, like, whatever your local arena is, probably bring in a live crowd, but it's just going to be for television from now on, it seems like. And no house shows whatsoever, which I always preferred house shows over television, because it always seems like you might see something cool. Like that's where they send guys to do test runs of gimmicks and stuff like that, or matches, that you might not see on television because they were trying to test a feud out.
And say, I'm going to approach this question to it for the live events.
Sure.
How long would the pandemic last, which we don't know of?
We have no clue.
So, if they wanted to at least temporarily throw the department out, I can see why. I can see why they would want to at least temporarily throw it out.
Right. Yeah.
Because with pandemic, it could be another 6 months, it could be another 12 months, or it could be longer.
Right. I think that, in personal opinion, I think it's in the next 6 months to a year, it's going to be under more control, and then things will definitely things might look a bit better. I think our new president coming in January is going to handle the pandemic a lot better than our current president. But we won't get into politics here. I don't really like to talk politics on the shows.
Neither do I.
I just stating what my opinion and how I think that the pandemic is going to affect the upcoming live events.
I don't like really talking much politics either, but I will say I agreed with you, Rick, on that.
Yeah.
What do you think of the rumor that Sting is unhappy with his WWE run?
I believe that. I believe that 100%. I was a huge Stinger fan growing up in the 80s and 90s. I think he came into NWA, WCW in 1988, and he had that match with Flair at the first Clash of Champions in 1988. It really boosted his career, and ever since then, I've been a fan of his. I didn't really know much about him prior to that in like the UWF or anything. I didn't see that version of the UWF until much later when I got into tape trading and then even YouTube. But I believe it because they didn't. Obviously, WWE is a very controlled product. They want 100% control over their employees. They're stopping people from using third-party streaming services. They're not allowed to use Twitch. They're not allowed to have YouTube channels, all this. But unless it's controlled by them, they want to control everything. So the fact that Sting was unhappy with his contract, I do believe that. I mean, he had a less than stellar run as an active wrestler in WWE, which is a shame because the guy, I mean, look at the guy's career. He had a legendary career. And he came in and, he lost his first match at WrestleMania
31.
To Triple H. And that match was just a travesty. I mean, it was a good match, but it was overbooked, getting the NWO and DX involved. It was just a, am I allowed to use derogatory terms here? Like,
yes, you are.
Stuff. It was a jerk off session for everybody involved, basically. Not necessarily Sting, but definitely for Triple H. You know what I mean? And the McMahons. I mean, you brought the NWO and DX in. It's just you were recreating 1998, 1999 for a crowd. Was it 31? What year was that? Probably 2013 or something like that. 15. So it's you got to figure it's kind of ridiculous. You know what I mean? It was the whole situation was irrelevant, but they had to put that final nail in the coffin to WCW 15 years later, 14 years later. I just found that to be ridiculous. And then the fact that he got injured by Seth Rollins, not being very careful and throwing him into the turnbuckle, and he injured his neck he injured.
Well, injuries can happen at any time, no matter who.
Of course they could, but you should be able to trust your opponent as well. Your opponent's you're supposed to be able to trust your opponent. Your opponent's supposed to protect you at all times in the ring as well.
Which that wasn't the first one that Seth Rollins had injured.
Yeah.
If you remember,
so enough said right there, right? So
because if you remember on Raw, Seth Rollins actually went to a Harley Race style knee to the face to John Cena and broke his nose.
Yeah. So my whole thing with that is that Sting wanted to come back because he suffered the supposed career-ending injury. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So they decided that they wanted to, he saw his doctors. They cleared him for active. He can get back in the ring. He just wanted to have that one more match, and WWE would not do that. They refused to because their doctors wouldn't clear him. I just think that they did not want to take that risk. And in that case that, he was treated unfairly. I mean, Sting was always a guy that was always in really good shape. He took care of his body for the most part. You know what I mean? But I would have liked to have seen that one more match in WWE, but I'm glad to see him pop up in AEW, whether he's going to be managing Darby Allin or if he actually, like they said, they kind of hinted right away that there's going to be a match with Jericho. I'd like to see that as well. Dan and I actually discussed possibilities on tonight's podcast of what Sting may do rather in during his AEW contract. So we're going to have to see. Only time will tell what's going to actually happen, though.
There's a few things I like to add to this
Sure.
about Sting.
Sure.
First of all, I'm not sure if you've seen it or not about the one final match that Sting wanted to have in WWE. And he wanted to have a cinematic match against The Undertaker.
Yep. That's been a rumor for many years that was going to happen, you know, and unfortunately it just didn't.
And so I wouldn't mind seeing a match against both of them, but during knowing their age,
right,
and knowing the pandemic, I honestly can see them having a cinematic match. But Undertaker did not. But Undertaker didn't want to have another cinematic match.
Right. If it was like, say, something 2001, 2002, it would have been another story. Those guys were still in pretty decent shape there, and then they could both have their little send-off matches. I don't really care for cinematic matches myself. I find them ridiculous. I'm a traditionalist when it comes to professional wrestling. You will hear me mention that on my podcast a lot. I hate cinematic matches. There's a lot of gimmick matches I do not like, and I don't know if I have the forum to say it here, but cinematic matches, I like more realism in my professional wrestling and not so much gimmicky and cartoony stuff.
And two, with WrestleMania 31, if you didn't, I told the DVD freak this after me and him got done filming our first wrestling trivia that we did for my channel, that WrestleMania 31, which I had to disagree with you on the Sting versus Triple H match, but I can remember that date specifically because it actually happened on my birthday.
That's pretty awesome. The funny part about that is I always, WrestleMania for years always came on the same date as the Walking Dead season finale. So I'd always leave in the middle of WrestleMania to go watch the Walking Dead season finale and then come back after just to watch the main event. So I made sure to stay in and watch the Sting match because I was really looking forward to that match.
And there's actually only 3 WrestleManias throughout history that actually happened on my birthday.
Really?
Yeah. The first one was actually 10 years before I was born. And that was WrestleMania 3, which happened on March 29th, 1987.
Okay.
Then the second one was on March 29th, 1998, which was WrestleMania 14. And, of course, WrestleMania 31 on March 29th, 2015.
All right. That's cool.
And here's a topic that many of us will know, and I know Rick will have a lot to say about this since he's more of an old school fan.
Very. I grew up in the 80s. That's my era, and that's, so that was my first impression of professional wrestling. You know what I mean? So that's what I view wrestling as. Sorry to cut you off, Don.
That's okay. And this person definitely, if I'm not mistaken, actually wrestled in the 80s, and he recently passed away on December 2nd, 2020, and that's Pat Patterson.
Yeah, he was more of a 70s guy, 60s, 70s guy, and then he wrestled into the 80s. I think he retired like a year before I got into wrestling. It's really hard to pinpoint. We actually talked about this tonight as well. He I think he retired in 1984, if I'm not mistaken. So and then he became an agent. So I don't really remember much about Pat Patterson because it was the year that I was getting into professional wrestling, and I just really only knew him as an agent. But as time went on, I started studying the history I used to buy old magazines. Remember, did you ever buy Pro Wrestling Illustrated or any of those old wrestling magazines like that? They'd always advertise the back issues. So I'd always go in and buy the oldest issues that were in there, and then I'd get them, and then I'd always read it. So that's how I found out mostly about Pat Patterson. And then it wasn't until later on, obviously the Attitude Era, when he was one of Vince's stooges and all that kind of stuff. And then through tape trading and getting in and, studying him through like old videos. Like I studied a lot of wrestling that was before my time.
say, of course, Pat Patterson was the first IC, the Intercontinental Champion.
Yep.
He actually thought of the Royal Rumble concept.
Yep.
Of course, like Rick said, he was one of the stooges for Vince McMahon in the Attitude Era. And of course, he helped a lot of newer talent today in the ring.
Yes. Yep.
One of the all-time greats, and deserved the spot to be in the Hall of Fame.
Yes, he died of cancer. Correct, at 79 years old.
79.
He was a smoker for a very long time, and I think he still was in his later days as well. Which is, that stuff's it's not good for you, man.
Have you seen the tribute video that WWE did for him?
I watched the NXT one. They did a tribute to him before the pay-per-view, right? Or before the pay-per-view, they did a little clip. That's the one that I saw.
I'm gonna have to interrupt you to correct you. It was not the NXT Takeover. It was the NXT TV 1 week from last night or tonight.
That's interesting because I don't remember watching that last week. Maybe I did see it, but I watched Monday Night Raw today's Wednesday, 2 nights ago for the first time in a very long time. I usually record Monday night, so sometimes I'll have that on in the background, but I actually watched that in its entirety for the first time in a very long time. It kills me, but the tribute that they had Monday was really good, and I thought they did something on Sunday on the pay-per-view, but I guess I was wrong. But no, they did one on SmackDown too, right? Correct?
They did. They showed the same video package on 1 week from tonight on NXT TV. Then they showed the same video package on SmackDown and then Raw. But of course, they did a little bit more with SmackDown and Raw by showing like tweets and everything else from superstars about his passing.
Yeah. Okay. That's when I saw it was SmackDown because I actually watched it because I was on somebody else's podcast, so I needed to watch SmackDown to study up on it. So, do you care a lot about the current product as far as Raw and SmackDown go?
I watch it, but
it
really the product really needs to be improved.
No shit, it's pretty horrific these days, and it's just growing up as a wrestling fan, and it's funny because I go back and watch some of the older stuff that I grew up with, and WWF and NWA, and it's definitely the NWA. If you watch it now as compared to then, NWA was leaps and bounds far better than WWF was. That WWF's like 1980 stuff, some of it really doesn't hold up. It's there and it's good for nostalgic reasons, but it doesn't really hold up. You know what I mean?
See, for my opinion, NWA now, well, at least before they stopped airing the NWA Power every week,
right? Yep.
Due to the pandemic, it was better than the WWE product.
It was absolutely 100%.
Say now during
the pandemic, they lost a lot of their talent during the pandemic, and it's every week they seem to be losing more and more talent, and it's really freaking sad, man. Because that company, I know right now they're not running, the guys ain't working, they can't really afford to pay them because of that, but. I really hope that that changes and that some of these guys will come back when they do start running up full time.
So you're talking about stars that like Ricky Starks, Eddie Kingston,
yep,
Thunder Rosa, which you like.
That's my favorite right there.
Allison Kay originally left the what I've seen. And then you was there any others besides those four?
As far as Thunder Rosa is still under contract until 2021, so she's not gone yet.
Well, she's like halfway out though.
Well, she's making appearances in AEW, and she's making appearances in United Wrestling Network, which is associated with the NWA. I don't know if you've ever watched their primetime live show at all, or Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. Those are really good shows if you don't watch it. They're both available on Fight. Championship Wrestling from Hollywood is free on Fight, but the primetime live, you can buy like the monthly bundle. They're like an hour and a half long. They're really good shows, I'm telling you. But have you checked out Shockwave yet?
I checked out the first episode. I forgot to watch the second episode, but
well, all the matches on there all the matches on there are taken from the Primetime Live pay-per-view tapings. So, it gives you a good chance they just take the NWA portions of Primetime Live and put them on that NWA Shockwave. So
the only problem I have with the Shockwave is the time. NWA Power was like more close to an hour, and at least the first episode of Shockwave was like 35 minutes.
Something like that. Yeah, they should have. They're really cramming for content. That's the problem with them, and it's kind of it's kind of sad. They should really be pushing to get more content. Like they should try to. You remember, like Power used to put in like those fake commercials in between matches and stuff like that. They should do stuff like that because it'll make it more interesting, I guess, or create it. They need to fill in the time to make it like a full hour show. But I'm glad they started putting that stuff up on YouTube because I'm a huge NWA fan. I know you know that.
And say once I started or once NWA Power start coming out and I start watching the NWA Power, I start becoming the NWA fan.
Yeah. See, I grew up on the NWA in the 80s, so it's completely obviously a different company, but they've changed over the years. With the 90s was a really rough period for them. The earlier 2000s, then they were associated with TNA/Impact TNA for a little while. And then, they struggled for another couple of years, but the Billy Corgan era prior to the pandemic was very strong. And I think Billy Corgan has a lot of big plans still left for the National Wrestling Alliance.
Dave, unless you have anything else, I have a question for you.
Go for it, man.
You and others on Pro Wrestling Zone podcast has been able to get interviews.
Yep.
And I'm interested in getting interviews myself. Do you have any advice on like how to contact them to try to get an interview?
I'll tell you.
Any advice on how to do the interview?
Yeah, I'll tell you. I'm a huge fan. I'm a huge mark myself. Okay. Basically, you go through, say, Twitter, Facebook, any other social media, and you drop a message. And I'm going to tell you something right now. I've probably only done about a dozen interviews, dozen and a half interviews. I got a lot coming up, though. I don't know did I send you my schedule? But I got a lot coming up. Start with indie guys. You know what I mean? There's always guys that will want exposure. You get what I'm saying? And hit them up. Just explain who you are. Explain you have a YouTube channel. And 95% of the time, you're gonna get no response whatsoever. There's like a 3% chance that you said, "Sorry, I'm not interested," and the other 2 is a yes. So, I tell you that I probably send 20 to 30 emails out every day or 2, and I don't get many responses. And then sometimes it'll be like there's guys that want to charge you. It's be like, you're here to promote them. Okay? Just keep that in mind. Unless there's somebody, I've had guys that wanted to charge me anywhere from $30 to $300, whether it be a legend or just some asshole that's washed up. But, just try to conduct yourself in a professional manner. Don't mark out, act like a fanboy, you know what I mean? Just try to be as professional as you possibly can and do your research. That's the most important part. Do you go to indie shows in your area at all?
I've been to one, and it was free at the time for that show there. It said the only trouble is one, finding out when it is, and 2, being able to have the money to be able to go.
Social media is a wonderful thing because you can find out about independent wrestling constantly. There's also a website. I'll have to send you the link. It's like a calendar, basically, and you type in your zip code, and it'll show you any indie wrestling events that are coming up in your area. I'll send you the link off air, because I'd have to look it up. I have it saved in my phone. So, one of the things is that indie shows could be generally pretty cheap. You can spend $5 to $10 to $15 at a show. I've been lucky that I've known people that are work for a certain independent company, that I've gotten to meet more of the people that work for this certain independent company, that, I just started hanging around and talking to them, and made friends with a lot of people. And then they'd offer to come on, and then it would help boost them up. It helped boost me up. And so that's always big. And I got to do a shout out to a gentleman, Mr. Don Kincaid, who invited me on his show, called the Fan Roundtable, Stirring the Pot, the Fan Roundtable, who had me on the show as part of a fan roundtable that gave me enough confidence to start my podcast and continue with it, and get the confidence to start asking wrestlers to come on the show and be part of my show. Like I said, 95% of the time you're going to be ignored, especially if it's, and I don't suggest jumping on and starting to message guys from WWE. You know what I mean? You're not going to get those guys. You get what I'm saying? Even the EW guys, there's the 95% chance you won't get them. Impact, there's a guy you got to go through. Hopefully he'll answer your email. If not, it's also a chance that he'll tell you that it's not worth it for him to send you, because he's told me that before. But that's okay, because I keep pushing, I keep trying. You're going to get discouraged. Just keep pushing and trying. I get discouraged all the time. So a lot of times I get discouraged. But I keep pushing, and after a day or so, it doesn't bother me, and I just keep pushing and trying harder and harder and harder to get to where I want to be with my podcast and with my video.
See, I thought about messaging, being kind as possible to one local wrestler that I have, which he was a jobber on WWE television, but he was still a local of Evansville, Indiana. That is
right.
For a company called Main Event Wrestling. I'm not going to say his wrestler does. A surprise.
Right.
But I more or less said, and I want to get your opinion on it.
Okay.
I said, I am a YouTuber, and I'm looking to get an interview with you. Can I get an interview with you?
Mm-hmm.
Does that sound...
Well, you can be like, hello, my name is Donnie Langston, and I represent, or I have a YouTube page. I'm looking to grow my YouTube page and add interviews. Would you be interested in coming on my show? Or I'd be interested in interviewing for my show, etc., etc. Go from there. Try to make it as professional sounding as you possibly can. I have to send 1 million emails out a day based on my work, so I kind of have experience in trying to sound professional. I can also send you more information off air. So,
say, you like Becky Lynch at all?
Not really. No, I've never understood the fanfare, I guess, for her. But I heard her and her little boyfriend there, Tyler Black, just had a baby.
Here's another thing that you probably kind of excited of. The Slammy Awards are coming back.
I heard. That'll be fun. I will be covering that for Pro WrestleZone at some point as well. When is that supposed to? It's going to be a network exclusive this time, correct? A lot of times they would do them on like Monday Night Raw, right?
They used to do it on Monday Night Raw, and it is going to be a network exclusive. It's going to be on December 23rd, 2020 at 9 a.m. Central, 10 a.m. Eastern.
All right. Well, I'm going to have to cover that. I'm sure that'll be a blast to talk about. Not in a good way.
Me, I'm kind of hoping that they kind of do like they used to do back in the 90s, have like a actual ceremony for it.
Yeah, I think that's what they're going to do, and they're just going to make it a kind of a joke. And, last time, was it back in the 80s, I think 86, 87, I think it was 87, that they had it like a ceremony, and, they had musical performances like Vince McMahon singing Stand Back and stuff like that.
Say, you want to mention anything, Rick?
Not really right now. I mean, I got a little while before we got to wrap it up. So I mean, other than just check out my show, man. That's what I'm trying to help and promote people, and that's what I'm there for, is to help get independent wrestling over. I also, it's not that I only cover independent wrestling. I don't, because I do talk about the big leagues, WWE, AEW, NWA, New Japan, Ring of Honor, and everything in between, from all the way from the bottom of the barrel to the top. I just talk, and I just want to promote wrestling and have a lot of fun doing that. It's just what I like to do. I like to talk wrestling, and I like to make appearances on other podcasts like Donnie Langston's show. Sit here, chat wrestling, and just chat the world. It's fun stuff to do, man. I look forward to it.
And say, the question I have about, and you probably would know since you watch it, is how to watch New Japan Pro Wrestling here in America.
Here in America?
Yeah.
Well, they do have the New Japan World app or website. You can join that. It's basically like their version of the WWE Network. There is an English feed for most of the product. Kevin Kelly does a lot of the formerly WWF, does the commentary with sometimes he's with Rocky Romero, and I forgot who the other, Alex Kozlov, I think, is the other guy. I usually catch it on there, or I'll sometimes the big events like Wrestle Kingdom or G1 will be featured on Fight, so you might like purchase the pay-per-view. Those are like the biggest shows of the year. That's pretty much how I get that stuff. I mean, for the most part. There's other ways to watch professional wrestling, but we won't talk about that on there. So New Japan, it's a really good product because it's really sports based. It's treated, every show's treated like it's a big fight feel kind of a thing going in. You get what I'm saying? Like, professional wrestling is a legitimate fight, and these two gentlemen are going in and they're going to have a battle. And that's what I really like about New Japan. I've always respected and loved the sport of professional wrestling in Japan because it treated it like a sport. It's more traditional. It does not go away from that traditional value that it always had. And I told you that I am a traditionalist when it comes to wrestling. I always like it treated like it's real. And New Japan is very good at doing that. Ring of Honor, too. Ring of Honor has been killing it the last month or two. Ever since it came back from the pandemic, I started doing new TV tapings, starting with the Pure tournament. It's really, really good.
Say, I should watch some Japan matches, but excuse me. But it was more of the older matches, like from like Chris Benoit's matches.
That's one of my favorite wrestlers of all time.
Chris is my sixth favorite.
Oh, you have him actually numbered. I have to say, Chris, he lingered. Him and Arn Anderson, they kind of switch 1 and 2, depending on what kind of day I'm having. So Arn Anderson was probably my first actual favorite wrestler. Then I started watching guys like Benoit, Malenko, Guerrero, and ECW and WCW and stuff like that. So they always kind of lingered. Arn was the baddest of the bad. He was the enforcer. But then once I discovered like Benoit, he kind of took that place for a while. Benoit, Hart, Owen, Brett, all those guys. But Arn is always, I think, at the top for the most part. And Benoit is always like the close second.
And see, for me, and I told, when me and him actually got done filming the first wrestling trivia that me and him did, I told the DVD freak that Benoit was actually my 8th at the time. But over time, I actually got pushing one person from a 6 on down, then of course his friend on down 1.
So who's number 1 through 5 if Benoit's number 6? I know number 1's Owen, right? Is that right?
Yep. Number 1's Owen. Number 2 is, and as you know, you can actually vote for the Slam Awards, and I had to vote for him. And it's Edge.
Yeah, I've always respected Edge. I was never like a fan, but and I gotta tell you, when he returned in the Royal Rumble, I actually jumped off my couch, like I popped.
So do I. So did I.
But I've never been a huge fan of his. But I think that they did really well of the surprise factor on that. That was, and like I said, I always liked him and respected him. I was just never a fan of him as a wrestler, but he's good.
And for me, and I'm sure you probably would agree, that he is a very talented in-ring performer that comes from a famous family, Eddie Guerrero.
Eddie's one of the greatest. He really is. He died tragically, very young, but he was always one of the greatest professional wrestlers of all time. There's a period he was really making a comeback after, the drugs and everything, and he came back into WWE. He was just killing it and having a great, great career, and then tragically passed away very young.
Which I do have a theory about Eddie with connected with Chris Benoit. But before I get into theory, my number 4, which we talked about him a little bit earlier, which I jumped up and was on the edge of my seat when he debuted for AEW last Wednesday night, and that's Sting.
Sting's great too. Oh, shit.
And
go ahead.
My 5th one, which his son is actually working for AEW now, and he died on October 5th, I believe, of 97, and that's Brian Pillman.
Another talented and great professional wrestler. He actually came across my timeline because I was updating the Pro Wrestle Zone Facebook page today. I usually try to keep as much content or posts coming out on that to keep it going. Today's the anniversary of Tom Zank's death, and he was tag team partners with Brian Pillman in the NWA/WCW. They won the United States Tag Team Championships together. So.
And like I was saying, there was a theory I have with Eddie and Chris where the Benoit tragedy would never probably would never happen if Eddie stayed alive.
I 100% agree with that, because the two were so close that I think when Eddie passed away, I think that damaged Chris's heart and his brain. Like, I think that just really upset him so much that he just wasn't the same after Eddie's passing. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that, he lost his best friend. He lost a lot of stuff. And that, Owen died. He was always close with the Hearts as well.
Say, the one thing I'd like to add to that theory is I believe that if Eddie was alive, Chris would have went to him over those thoughts that he was having.
That's very possible. Yes.
And there's really, for Owen, there's also I have another theory of he could have, his death could have not probably would never happened if it wasn't for one man. And this is the person I have to blame for. And this is the one person I was talking about that I actually pushed down because of me just more convincing myself more and more that he's at fault, and that's Shawn Michaels. He back in the 90s, if you remember, he always had to been on top.
Yes. Yeah, he had to always have. Yeah, he had a problem, ego problems, stuff like that. I was never a fan of Shawn Michaels. And I think I talked about this a while back on my podcast, probably 2-3 episodes back. Well, not episodes, but maybe 2-3 weeks back. I don't know if you've seen one of my new co-hosts, the Guardian of Chaos, Big Daddy. He and I were talking about Shawn Michaels, and I always stated that I never pictured Shawn Michaels. This is me. I never pictured Shawn Michaels as being more than a tag team wrestler or maybe a mid-carder. He was just too small, too skinny. He worked perfectly in a tag team. Maybe, like I said, a mid-carder, intercontinental title, but world champion, headliner. That style just never really got me.
See, with Shawn, with me, he always had to be on top. So therefore, if it wasn't for Shawn, I think Owen probably could have been on
He
top.
he screwed one of my favorite wrestlers of all time, Bret Hart. So, you know.
Well, that's a different opinion for me.
Yeah.
I think it was Vince kind of screwed Bret, and Bret also screwed Bret. Because I think because it was a different way of going about it. Yeah, I think we both
they could have all been adults. I think Bret could have gone about it a different way as well. But Bret, and Vince, they could have come to an agreement if neither of them was being stubborn. But
and say they could have went it 2 ways. One, Undertaker's way of adding him to the match and having Bret be pinned by Undertaker, and then having Taker drop the belt to Shawn.
Right.
Or my favorite way, the one I actually came up with, have Bret face Owen and have Bret drop the belt to Owen and make him the main event.
I always thought Owen was going to get a run with the belt, but obviously we never found out.
Well, it could have happened at Survivor Series 97 if they went with my way, have Bret face Owen and make him the main event star as well he deserved.
Right. Yeah, you're right, man.
But they didn't make him the main event star.
Right. Right.
Say another thing, or another person I believe that killed Owen is Vince fucking Russo. I hate Vince fucking Russo.
Well, let me just tell you before we go, because I got to wrap it up in a little bit. But I do. See, I got to kind of. I don't think Vince Russo was a great for professional wrestling by any means. I will fully admit that, 100%. Obviously, he was in the right place at the right time. He came up with storylines that grabbed attention when the professional wrestling industry needed attention because it was, or WWF, excuse me, needed attention because it was failing miserably at that time period. He is a super nice fucking dude. He really is. He just doesn't, he's got to take his head out of his ass when it comes to certain things. I've spoken to him through social media at times. He's also a very big stereo collector, like classic stereos and stuff like that, as am I. And so we've chatted about equipment on times. And he's really very nice and professional. But talking about wrestling, I would never talk professional wrestling with him. I see how he comments on a lot of today's products and how he puts it down. A lot of the shit that he is talking about, that's the same kind of shit that he did back in 1999. So
he has one good idea out of 100.
Really?
That's why Vince McMahon took that one good idea out of that 100 and rolled with it.
Right. And
he's one reason why WCW went downhill.
No, he's not one reason. He is the reason. Giving him, when WCW hired him and they gave him full creative control, it was just fucking pure. It was like letting the inmates run the asylum. It's made no sense whatsoever. Vince McMahon filtered all the drizzling shit that Vince Russo came up with. He was able to filter it and put certain things on to the television, whereas WCW, they just let him run rampant.
Well, I'm going to change it a little bit for what me and you both said. He is the main reason, but there are other reasons why WCW went downhill. Like backstage politics.
Well, that's been involved in professional wrestling for decades. Nash didn't help him because when he had the book, he always put himself over. You know what I mean? He made himself world champion God knows how many fucking times. And did we need 200 members in the NWO? And did we need 2 different NWOs? Then 3? Come on now.
To quote Chris Benoit through his documentary, wrestling is supposed to be more about the opportunities than the politics, not the politics over the opportunities.
Right. Yep.
And just to wrap the things up, I've been chatting with Rick from the Pro Wrestling Zone, Rick Del Santo. You can catch me on Facebook, Donnie Langston, Twitter, and Instagram at DonnieLangston5. And don't forget that, and I hope Rick don't mind me plugging this here, but you can like the Facebook Pro Wrestling Zone Facebook page. Then you want to promote anything else?
Well, like I said, just check out the Pro Wrestlers Home podcast. We're on every podcast platform imaginable. You can check out our Facebook page, PWZ Podcast. Social media, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at the Rick Del Santo. You can contact me there. And, check out the page, check out the podcast. Say hello. Have some fun. Let's talk wrestling, man. That's what we're here for. Let's have some fun.
See you guys next time.
And I just want to say thank you very much, Donnie, for having me on your show.
And you're very welcome. See you guys next time. Peace.